Shoot him, Daddy. Shoot him at once.
Why?
He impugned my honor.
No.
He admits it, see? Shoot him.
I said what I said, and I'll stand by it to the death.
My honor is at stake.
It's because you have no sense of humor.
One of the founding principles of the United States is the importance of a fair and equitable legal system, one which is supposed to operate on the basis of evidence, law, and logic. Among the tenets of our legal system is the understanding that serious allegations which carry heavy penalties are examined using a higher standard for evidence and specificity in the law, lest such penalties be unjustly applied to the innocent. These conventions have been in place since our system's creation. For years, they have been under attack by feminists, because feminists do not understand justice. Most people use the term justice when they really mean appeasement of the side of a conflict with which they sympathize. In feminist terms, this means vindication of the female victim narrative through individual women's cases. That is, of course, not justice, but feminist gynocentrism. Neither conviction nor acquittal are, in and of themselves, justice. Rather, that is achieved by completing a quest for the truth, using those vital tools, evidence, law, and logic, and then reacting fairly, equitably, and in proportion to the reality of what is found through that quest. Recognition of that is the reason the framers of our nation's Constitution found the right to due process so indispensable that they mentioned it not just once, but twice, in the Fifth Amendment and in the 14th Amendment. This was to guarantee not only that citizens facing criminal allegations would be afforded the opportunity for a robust defense as a protection against false conviction and wrongful punishment, but that the public could be assured that our government-stewarded resources for responding to criminal acts would be applied to actual perpetrators, and therefore used to deter crime, rather than being applied to poorly defended citizens while perpetrators go free to offend again. For these reasons, neither the integrity of the judicial branch of the government nor the citizens' due process rights can be considered disposable or even flexible. They cannot be compromised, but must be vigorously defended and diligently honored. They must be held sacred, immune to ideology or politics, and above all, irreplaceable. Campus Title IX administrations and their kangaroo courts have done a bang-up job of demonstrating that. They are built on the sharp edge of glaring contradictions, and as a result, they have created such a grievous wound on the fabric of American civil rights as to have caused the very thing they were promoted as a means to prevent. When promoting the substitution of campus investigations and tribunals for actual law enforcement and judicial hearings, feminists treat all campus sexual misconduct, even simple failure to defer to female student sensibilities, as a grave issue with distressing impact on the learning environment. Their arguments run counter to the logic behind the American legal system. Rather than recognizing that serious allegations merit higher standards for evidence and meticulous jurisprudence, they claim that same seriousness merits compromise of these time-tested measures. According to these carping harridans, judicial rules for the submission and consideration of evidence, the rights of the accused, and legal representation to ensure a fair hearing must be thrown out the window. Instead, they say, male students accused of sexual misconduct must be presumed guilty from the start, their defense suppressed and restrained, and regardless of the complexity of the system they're up against, they're not to be entitled to legal representation, but may be limited to consultation, and that at their own expense. Why? Because according to feminists, if female students don't have the ability to bypass the legal system with a substitute which will railroad whoever they accuse, they don't have equal access to post-secondary education. Remember, feminists describe sexual assault, especially rape, as a crime so atrocious and brutal as to cause post-traumatic stress disorder, break a woman for the rest of her life, and even be considered a fate worse than death. Then, they simultaneously treat the penalties university administrators can apply following their investigations in tribunals, nothing worse than expulsion, with no rehabilitation programs, and no incarceration, as sufficient punishment for such presumably egregious, life-wrecking crimes, yet not too severe to be inflicted on innocent students upon whom culpability has been wrongfully imposed. Meanwhile, when a male student accuses a female student or staff member of sexual misconduct, feminist claims about the savage consequences of such crimes vanish, only to be replaced with nakedly contemptuous attacks on the accuser. Unfair, their battle cry rings out across the political landscape. How dare you exploit a woman's initiative as a weapon against a member of the privileged class for whom it was created? Suddenly, sexual misconduct doesn't interfere with the victim's learning environment anymore. And even if it does, it's his own fault for being so anti-woman. And even if it's not, the standard for what may be considered misconduct is much more narrow. What's the matter with that guy, anyway? Why is he so oversensitive? Why is he being such a pussy? A little female attention never hurt anyone now, did it? It's not like he couldn't have fought back. It's not like she injured him. What is he, gay? Are you gonna ruin a woman's career path because of some guy's feels? Hashtag masculinity so fragile, am I right? Forget about feminism's toxic masculinity narratives. Forget about opposition to homophobia. Forget about patriarchy hurting men, too. All bets are off when a woman is subjected to rules feminists contrive to apply to men. No, this is not justice. It's a means by which justice can be bypassed for the benefit of campus feminists at the whims of the women on whose fears and fury they profit. While these acrimonious harpies promote their massive attack on due process via the train wreck of university tribunals under the guise of preventing a hostile educational environment for female students, what they've actually done is create a hostile environment for male students. And it's dangerous, not just to the individual men subject to injustices as a matter of course in these investigations, but to the nation itself, as it is an attack on the fundamental principle of due process as a civil right. That right isn't reduced by the seriousness of an allegation. The allegation does not define the nature of the accused. That right isn't reduced by the potential impact of the alleged crime either, as unless guilt is proved, the crime itself does not define the nature of the accused. Sympathy for the accuser, also not a defining factor of anyone involved in the case, is no excuse to compromise the rights of the accused. This is a nation where everyone is created equal, with equal rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our constitutionally protected civil rights apply equally under the law, and must be equally protected under that same law. Never forget that civil rights are the legal limitations on government action against citizens, created to protect citizens from oppression, as determined by human rights considerations. We cannot permit a subjective emotional response to either the accusation or the accuser to reduce our acknowledgement of and deference to every citizen's basic civil rights. We cannot weigh our civil rights differently, depending on the sex of the person whose rights are under consideration. The choice to fall into that trap depends on treating the humanity of one sex as if it is less than that of the other. A society that makes that compromise, especially on the basis of any citizen demographic, is lost. We would be no more righteous, no more validated, no more upstanding, and no more rational than a torch and pitchfork-wielding lynch mob. To date, we are seeing our real, time-honored judicial system reminding universities of that, one case at a time. This, despite our courts themselves having been compromised by ideological hogwash that is ironically known as feminist jurisprudence. Perhaps the system has not been as feminized as expected, or perhaps that old adage is true. The government hates competition. Either way, One would think that might act as compelling evidence that university administrations are not an acceptable substitute for the United States justice system. As we learned last week on HBR Talk, it hasn't worked that way. Instead, Title IX administrators are attempting to figure out how to maintain their mocked-up system without offending the real courts. Our discussion on that topic continues tonight with a look at the rest of the Rowan University Title IX Conference presentation, How to Avoid a Title IX Lawsuit, Lessons Learned and Best Practices for Respondents. If avoiding due process lawsuits is the goal, I know one practice that would be a guaranteed success. How about we abolish universities' kangaroo courts altogether and resume proper handling of criminal allegations by the criminal justice system?
Are you insane?